Hello.
Hey, Miss Cat. Sorry, I had sent out a message. I couldn't connect. Apologize, guys. Good morning.
Good morning.
Were you doing something with
We
them?
were yeah, we were talking about the morning meeting question this morning, which was if you could live forever, would you want to? And mostly everybody said no,
Okay.
which is fair. We were talking about, or at least I was saying that I feel like little kids, when you ask them that question, they think it's so cool to be able to live forever and to be like invincible. But then as you get older, that view changes.
Yeah. Especially when your back hurts when you wake up in the morning.
Yeah. I was saying it'd be different if maybe we could slow down the aging process or something like that. Like if we could like still be able to physically do the things that we'd want to as we got older, maybe I would consider it, but I don't know.
Good morning. How's everybody? Hi, Quay, Relisha, Amir, Naima. Good morning. How are you folks doing? Are we there?
Good morning.
How is everybody
Good
doing? Sorry for being late. I apologize. Miss Cat was here though. She got your back. So nobody wants to be Peter Pan? Nobody wants to stay alive forever?
No, nobody wants to be Peter Pan, Mr. Tinsel. No.
Why not?
I don't like people, so why would I want to live forever to keep seeing and continue the same people? No.
What about the people you do like?
I don't like them either.
So you're down to liking no one. Okay. That's cool. I could dig it. All right. Let me just do attendance. Do you guys know Miss Cat? I'm sorry. Are you done with them now, or
Yeah, I mean if anyone wants to chime in with their thoughts, I'm fine with it, but that's our question and that's all I have.
anybody got any thoughts? Okay, I'm gonna take that as a no. Just gonna send out just a quick. I'm just gonna send out a quick email. I don't know what was going on with my internet, but like, did you ever have it when you Miss Cat where you're trying to connect to your internet, but Comcast keeps taking over?
Yeah, sometimes. If you do you ever try to hit the like forget this network or don't auto join for that? That might help.
Yeah, I don't know. It just seemed like it just wanted to go to Comcast like 3 times, so I had to reset my computer.
Hmm.
It's weird. Okay, so let me get my attendance. American history and Russia Ponder. All right, just give me 1 second and we'll get started, guys. Just want to send out another email for those who aren't here. Okay, I'm ready now. Sorry about that. Last class. I'm just trying to think. I know I have 2 different classes. Did we get to review Nat Turner last class? Students,
We were doing Jim Crow laws.
we were doing what?
Jim Crow laws. The Jim Crow laws.
Jim Crow laws. Okay. All right. Yeah. So that was that's your first checkpoint. That is up on Summit. So let me just show you real quick before we get started where you can find that on Summit, where you can find your PowerPoint. So let me pull up Summit real quick. And it's literally that one question that we had asked. Let's see. Anybody do it yet? Let me see. Doesn't look like it. So when you go to Summit, you should see, let's see, where's it at? Sorry about that. I'll find it in a second here. How am I not getting Summit? Oh, here it is. Is this it? No, hello, where's Summit? Okay, can you see this now on the screen? This is your
Yeah, I was gonna do that right here.
Okay, this is the checkpoint one, and it's based off of the PowerPoint that should be on Summit. So I just want you to go through and I want you to list the ways, just maybe 2 to 3 ways in which Jim Crow laws discriminated against Black people in the USA. So it's more of a generalized question. I don't want it to be so specific to time frames. As long as you can remember, there was education, it was leisure, travel, voting. So I think we took some notes last week when we went through the PowerPoint on some of the points that kept Black people from being hindered in United States society by Jim Crow laws. This week, we're going to be talking about Black militarism. And this is the response to, well, we're going to look at the precursor, and then we're going to look at the response to slavery. So we're going to start off this week with Nat Turner, and then we are going to switch to John Brown, and then we'll be moving into the 1950s. So we're going to skip about 70 years in between. So today we're going to talk about Nat Turner. Let me get my PowerPoint up here. So that's checkpoint 1. If anybody needs the PowerPoint, please just ask me and I will email it to you. It should be available on Summit there under the resources. So should any other links for documents. There was a video about juvenile justice that we watched in class. Okay, Raji, thank you. Welcome to class. All right. So if anybody needs checkpoint 1, please just send me an email and I will send it to you. Okay. All right. So gotta share here. Darian, good morning. I'm just trying to get this to share. Hello. There we go. Okay. So today we're going to talk about Black militarism, or the response. We have spent a couple of days talking about some of the things that have been done. Let's see. Is that Raji? Okay. I'll send an email. I know that when I spoke to Mr. Gary the other day, they were waiting for some of the graduates to return some of the computers, and I think they had like 2 or 3 in the building. So I'll send an email about that for you, Raji, about getting a computer. And Naima, you said you need another Gmail. So you need to have your Yes Philly email reset. Is that what you're saying? You can't get a password? Is that Kashmir? Okay. Hi, Kashmir. Naima, I will send out and I'll have Dr. David reset your password. Okay. So Raji, I'll send Dr. Gary or Mr. Gary something about your computer, and Naima, I'll get your password reset. And if you guys need help, I'm also here in the afternoon between 1 and 3 o'clock. Okay, so our agenda for today is that we're just gonna not gonna spend a long time reviewing Jim Crow laws. I think we did watch the video on the modern Jim Crow effect. And then we have checkpoint 1, which I just gave to you, which is on Summit. And that's your first checkpoint. Now, even though your first progress reports have gone in, that was based more on participation and attendance. So checkpoint 1, we try to get that done by the end of the week. And it's simply a question, what effect do Jim Crow laws have on Black people and how they continue to have an effect? So we're going to talk about Nat Turner. I guess I'll ask you a question. Maybe I'll do it in a poll. Okay. So the question I'm going to ask you is, if enslaved, what measures would you take? And I'm going to give you a couple of options. Okay, so this is ready. Here it comes. All right, so I'm starting off with a poll. Hopefully that'll save. Here we go. Can you guys see that on your screen? Did it come up yet? There we go.
No.
Okay,
Oh,
so
yes.
can you see it now? Okay, so I want you guys to respond. There's 8 people there. And the question is, if you were enslaved, and this was a reality for many people in the 1800s who were of color, if you were enslaved, what actions would you take? Would you accept it? Would you run away? Would you fight? Or would you literally fight back and kill the master? So I have 2 people that voted so far. So if the rest of you guys can take a moment and vote, please. Just grab my tea, I'll be right back. Okay, only half the people have voted. So who else didn't vote? Just let me know if you vote by putting a thumbs up in the box there. Thank you, Naeem. Quay, did you vote?
Yeah, I voted.
Ralisha, did you vote, please? Amir, did you vote? Darion?
Yeah.
Raji, Kashmir? Because it says 4 of 8. Only says half people voted so far. Okay, thank you, Ralisha. Okay, so I only have 4 people voting. So don't waste too much time on that. Okay, so the results would be so far, I have one person who said they would accept being enslaved. No one seems to want to run away from slavery. The largest answer would be would fight, and one would took the extreme of killing the master. Okay. The reason that I asked you this is because we're going to be examining Nat Turner. And Nat Turner was he was born a slave. Well, he was born a slave. His mother was actually stolen from Africa, and his father was an American slave. And he was very talented. Nat Turner was a highly intelligent man. You guys can see the PowerPoint again? Okay.
Yes.
He was a very intelligent man. He was actually called the prophet. They used to take Nat Turner and take him from plantation to plantation. And when there was an uprising of slaves, he would teach them what the Bible said about being a good slave. There's a lot of sections in the Bible that were used to tell people how to stay in their place. And sometimes they would use other slaves to reinforce this idea that people were supposed to be in slavery. Monday through Friday, they didn't hear much about the love of God, but on Sundays, they made sure that they taught them that they were supposed to follow their earthly masters and be submissive to them. So Nat Turner, he actually escaped slavery. He got free from slavery and decided to go back into a state of slavery. But he didn't do it with the intent of staying a slave. He did it with the intent of pretty much reaping justice on those he felt that were enslaving people and doing wrong. So this is before the Civil War. This is kind of a precursor to Jim Crow laws and the Black Codes. And so in August of 1831, Nat Turner struck fear in the hearts of white Southerners by leading the only effective slave rebellion in U.S. history. So he was born on a small plantation in Southampton County, Virginia. Turner inherited a passionate hatred of slavery from his African-born mother and came to see himself anointed by God to lead his people out of bondage. So this hyperlink here, if you use it, this will be on Summit. It's kind of a supplemental, some more supplemental information. Let me see if I can bring it up here for you. Your next checkpoint is going to be a Black History timeline. I'll share that with you too. And what you're going to be doing is you're going to start in the 1950s and you're going to use this timeline to fill in the different blanks. So this literally gives you a collective timeline. I didn't want to go back as far as 1619, but if you're interested in the history of slavery and revolt in America, this article will give you a pretty much comprehensive from the slave ships in 1619 and the rise of the cotton industry, which is the 1790s. So you have to understand that slavery was going on for a long time. You figure in the 1619 till 1863, that's almost a 200-year span that slavery was taking place in the United States. So after the third entry here is Nat Turner slave revolt. In 1831, Turner, who was, like I said, he was a preacher, he was a minister, he returned back to his master out of saying, you know,
What's in your pantry? Award-winning Goya chickpeas? Let's make a chickpea skillet with chorizo and shrimp. Chickpeas, olive oil. Wait, a salad instead? Chickpeas.
Okay, sorry about that, guys. I have no idea where that came from. Advertising from the left wing there. So he saw a solar eclipse in the sky, And he took that as they were actually had planned the revolution for 4th of July, America's birth date. But he saw there was two solar eclipses back to back. And he decided that solar eclipse was a sign from God that it was time to lead up his rebellion and to get Black people out of bondage. Let's see, somebody want number one? Okay, not a problem. So there was a family called the Travis family. They were the owners of Nat Turner. And the slaves actually revolted and killed the Travis family, including their smallest child in the cradle. They literally murdered everyone. And then between the next couple of days, every white person they came across, they killed them. It was about 60 white people. They were headed to a place called Jerusalem, where they were going to take over the armory, and they were going to continue this rebellion. But Nat's goal was to really just basically wipe out every slave master and just kill as many as he could. He just had enough of slavery. He had living a life of bondage. So when I gave you those options, some people would have accepted it. I don't think I would have lasted too long. They would have had to kill me. I don't think I could have spent my life in servitude. But we don't know until we get to that point of fear. Remember, they had the power to separate our families. They had the power to take away our children. Is that Gianna that came in?
What you say?
I said, is that Gianna that came in? Okay. Yeah, I recognize your picture, Gianna. I was just making sure I got you for attendance. That's all. Welcome to class. Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
So he saw this eclipse as a sign that God was telling him it was time to fight back against his oppressors. So he had himself a small army, about 100 people, and they all died in this revolt. Now, of course, as it is in America, only 60 white people were killed, but national reports exaggerated and said that hundreds and hundreds of white people have been killed, and the time has come. Black people are going to rise up against us, so we must now fight back against this uprising. So a wave of anxiety came across the South. They started making special emergency sessions of the legislature, which is the lawmakers, and they strengthened their codes in order to limit the education, movement, and assembly of enslaved people. So it's kind of the same thing as these are called the Black Codes. These are a precursor to Jim Crow laws. And it basically took away any civil trial. So if you were Black and you were accused of a crime, you had no trial. If you were free and you were accused of a crime, you could be placed back into a state of slavery. So it seems to be the same things that were going on with Jim Crow, trying to limit education, social movement, and assembly, which means Black people could not protest. I think we had a class about Colin Kaepernick. You remember Colin Kaepernick and his protest against the flag where he was taking a knee? Does anybody remember Colin Kaepernick? We did a whole lesson on him. He was the football player that took a knee. Remember Colin Kaepernick, the football player who took a knee?
Yeah, the white boy.
Yeah, he took a knee, and he set up other people taking knees across the country. But this assembly, this idea of Black people protesting has always been a problem. And even today, with Black Lives Matter, they're always accused of being militarized or militant. That word militant or militarized just means having to do with force. It has to do with fighting back. That's why I asked the poll, how many people would be in slavery and accept the fact that they were in slavery and stay in slavery. So while supporters of slavery pointed to the Turner Rebellion as evidence that Black people were inherently inferior barbarians, requiring an institution such as slavery to discipline them. That's a lot to say. So those who were in favor of slavery were saying, see, the people that we have in chains, they need to be in chains because they are inferior barbarians, and they require such a cruel institution like slavery to keep them in line. So the increased repression of Southern Blacks would strengthen anti-slavery feeling in the North and through the 1860s and intensify the regional tension toward building a civil war. So Nat Turner's rebellion, and then the hanging of John Brown, which would be the next step. Well, I think he might be right here. Let's see, where's John Brown is. Fugitive slave case. Where's John Brown? Well, here's John Brown here. We're going to look at John Brown later this week. But believe it or not, John Brown was a white man. And John Brown was so infuriated with...
The Honda HR-V is perfect for your typical day.
These advertisers just don't stop, do they? John Brown was actually a white man, and he was a fierce abolitionist. He did not believe in the institution of slavery. He was against it. And he actually started to kill the slave masters. And he was hung on December 2nd, 1859. And a lot of people in historical circles kind of say that the hanging of John Brown was kind of the last straw before the Civil War. Now we had the fight between the Molitor and the Monitor in the Pacific, not Pacific, the Atlantic. But his death really kind of sparked national calls for a civil war. So let me go back to Nat Turner. So this is an image of Nat Turner. Sorry, where did my PowerPoint go? There it is. So let me pull up an image of Nat Turner. So to understand, there wasn't many cameras back then, so a lot of stuff that was done was portraits. So if you look on the right-hand side here, that's a portrait of Nat Turner. Let me see if there's any more down here that give it a little clearer. That's another portrait of Nat Turner. So that's what he physically looked like. Okay. Sorry about all the screen sharing. So time for action. This is where Nat saw the eclipse more than once in the sky. And he decided that was a sign from God that it was time to fight back. So now that I've told you about Nat Turner, I'm going to show you a short, it's not super graphic. It's definitely not for kids, but you guys are teenagers and young adults. So it's more of a dramatization of what happened in Nat Turner's slave revolt. And then we'll talk about the aftermath. I gotta find it real quick. Okay, I got it. This is about 6 minutes long. There are 3 questions that I want you to be concerned with. And that is, why did Nat Turner revolt? Was he justified in his actions? And then what happened after the slave revolt? So those are the 3 questions that we're going to answer when we're done watching the video. I want to know why Nat Turner revolted. I want to know if you think he was justified, which means, do you think his actions were warranted? Do you believe that his actions were something that he should have done? And then what happened after the slave revolt? And we'll have a conversation about these 3 things after we're done watching the video. All right, can everybody see the screen with the orange face here? Okay.
August 1831, Southampton County, Virginia. The fears of the slaveholding South were realized. Rebellion. Over 70 slaves armed with knives, hatchets, and bludgeoning objects swept the pastoral countryside, killing all in their path. Their leader was a slave named Nat Turner. Born in the year 1800, Nat's mother had been kidnapped and brought from Africa. His father, a slave who later escaped. He would preach to fellow slaves and even some whites, earning him the nickname Prophet, and even claimed to receive visions. When he was 22, he escaped and fled, only to return to the plantation voluntarily. When asked why, he claimed, "The Spirit appeared to me and said I had my wishes directed to things of this world and not to the kingdom of heaven, and that I should return to the service of my earthly master." But Nat was not back to subserviently serve in bondage. He knew his purpose was to avenge those that suffered under the chains of slavery. At age 27, while working in his master's field, an intense vision befell him. The serpent is loosened. Christ laid down the yoke for the sins of man, and you shall take it up to fight against the serpent. The time is near when the first shall be last, and the last shall be first. Nat began to prepare. At first confiding only in those closest to him. Then, in 1831, a solar eclipse appeared in the sky like a black fist blotting out the sun. They planned the uprising for July 4th, Independence Day. But illness befell Nat, and the insurrection was called off. That was until August of the same year, when another solar eclipse occurred and the air turned a ghastly grayish blue. This was the sign Nat was waiting for. The rebellion began a week later. It started the night of August 21st. The small band of slaves killed Nat's owner, Joseph Travis, his wife and son, as well as a hired worker, in their beds while they slept. After the group left, they recalled that there was one more member of the Travis family. So 2 slaves returned to kill the infant in its cradle. Nat felt that this violence was necessary to finally bring about the change needed to awaken abolitionists' allies and shake the foundation of slavery to pieces. To Nat, this wasn't about anger. It was holy retribution. Over the next 2 days, the rebellion brought Old Testament carnage to the Southampton countryside, killing more than 60 whites in their path. Hundreds of federal troops and thousands of white militiamen intercepted the rebellion on its way to the center of the county's government, a town named Jerusalem. Nat managed to escape, hiding himself in the woods for over 2 months until he was found. Once captured, he was quickly tried, convicted, and hanged. His body was desecrated, flayed, and decapitated, with his headless remains buried in an unmarked grave. 30 other slaves and 1 free black man would also be convicted, 19 of them being hanged and the others sold to places far away. But this punishment paled in comparison to those African Americans that were murdered by paranoid, vengeful whites. Upwards of 200 blacks were killed by mobs during and following the rebellion. In the aftermath, some whites, including Thomas Jefferson Randolph, grandson to the 3rd president, called for gradual emancipation to remove slavery. Instead, what followed in Virginia were even harsher codes for blacks. No jury trials for African Americans. Free blacks found guilty of crimes could be sold into slavery. And it was now illegal to teach any black to read. Many other southern states followed suit. Nat Turner's rebellion was a product of over 2 centuries of oppression in Virginia. While the concentrated horror committed by those in the insurrection cannot be denied, the horrors inflicted upon them and their ancestors must be remembered to begin to understand the event. It was a violent, abominable response to a violent, abominable system, and it proved the age-old truth. Evil begets evil.
Stop this real
All
quick.
month long, we are so.
Okay, so I have some questions for you. Now you got to see a visualization of what happened with Nat Turner. I have a couple questions to ask you. If I can get the right thing up here. Okay, so why did Nat Turner revolt? What was his reasoning for leading a slave insurrection? So I put this in chat. Why did Nat Turner revolt? What was his reasoning behind it? This question is for you guys, it's for the students. I already know, so I'm asking you. Why did Nat Turner revolt? We just talked about it. We just watched a video about it. What was he revolting against? Come on, somebody respond. I know it's Monday morning. I know we're still a little tired. Why did Nat Turner revolt? What was he revolting against? Amir, did you watch the video? Why did Nat Turner revolt? I'm just going to go and ask everybody until somebody responds. Naima, why did Nat Turner revolt? Quay, you there?
Because of the past history with all the black slaves, all the
Good.
American slaves.
Excellent. So he revolted because of the treatment of Black Americans in slavery. He wasn't just revolting against what happened to him in his life. He was revolting against almost 200 years of slavery. Now, you have to understand, when you talk about slavery, I don't think a lot of people have a true understanding what slavery was. It wasn't just working in a field. It wasn't just picking cotton. It was about someone having control of everything that you did, every thought, every action. And you could be beat, killed, raped, mistreated for anything that they saw as something that you did against their wishes. So this type of treatment of people of color being sold, some being Africans, some being from the islands like Jamaica, Haiti, but mostly from Africa, being stolen from Africa, brought to America, and put into bondage, into slavery. So I guess the next natural question would be, we know why Nat Turner revolted, because of the treatment of Black American slaveries. So the next question I would say to you, was he justified in his actions? He said that it was a holy retribution. He did not see it as revenge. He saw it as holy retribution for the ungodly act of slavery. You have to remember that Nat Turner was an educated man. He was not an ignorant man. He knew the Bible. He knew the Bible so well that sometimes he would even teach white people the Bible. So my question is, was he justified in what he did? Is there any reason ever to murder, even if you're being held in slavery? What do you guys think about that? Was he justified? Would you fight or possibly kill for your own freedom? Gianna, what do you think? Okay, Relisha said she would. Anybody else have any input? If someone was holding you in a state of bondage, in a state of slavery, controlling every aspect of your life, what you ate, where you went. What about you, Miss Cat? I know you're here, but if someone was trying to hold you from your autonomy and your rights as a human being, would you fight back for your freedom?
Honestly, it would depend on the amount of power that they had over me.
Okay. What if they had complete power over you?
Like, I would want to. I feel like I'm thinking about like fighting back in current day versus fighting back then. I feel like is a lot different. And as much as like mentally in my mind I would want to fight back, if somebody was like had that much power over me, I don't know if I would be able to as much as I would want to, if that makes sense.
Okay. And that's actually, there was a lot of people who were in slavery who wanted to fight back, who felt they couldn't. I've read stories that some people, while they were on the slave ships in chains, literally jumped off. That they would rather have met their deaths than to spend their life in bondage. This was a common occurrence. What about running away? How many people would try to run away? That was one of your poll questions. Remember, you're talking about, if you know anything about Harriet Tubman, we're talking about, hundreds of miles over rough terrain by herself. I mean, she went back several times into the South to bring people back to the North. So Alicia seems like the only one that says that she would fight back against their oppressors. Knowing myself, Miss Cat, they just gonna have to kill me, because every chance I get, I'm fighting somebody until there's nothing left of me. That's just me personally. So what was the result of his revolt? What changed for people who were in slavery? What were some of the repercussions? There's a couple things that happened after he revolted. Some type of new restrictions were put in place for people of color. Does anybody pick up what they were? What was the result of Nat's rebellion? Am I the only one that watched the video? Did we all sleep through it? What happened after Nat Turner was caught? What did they do to him? He tried to hide in the woods for several months. When they caught him, they actually decapitated him. That means they removed his head from his body. They flayed his body into pieces, and they buried his body without a head in a grave with no name on it. So you couldn't even find his grave if you wanted to. But what happened was people in the South started to just kind of do mob justice. And after the revolts, over 200 innocent Black people were killed. A lot of people say that Nat's revolt was actually one of the precursors for the Ku Klux Klan too. I mean, the emancipation and the 15th Amendment really took them over the top. But this is where the idea started to come forward, for this idea of that this is why we keep Blacks in chains, because they are barbarians. And if we let them free, they're going to kill everybody. Is that a prevalent idea still in our society? Is there still a fear of Black men and women in our society? Are there still plantations? Are there any physical plantations left in the South where Black people are working on fields? What have they traded the plantation?
No, but probably in South America.
Okay, thank you, Naima. Maybe there's people still in servitude in South America, but in America, we have taken one institution, which was slavery, bondage, work, and plantations, and we've literally translated it into another institution. Does anyone know what that institution is? So instead of sticking young Black men on plantations, where do they stick them now? It's jail. The 13th Amendment abolished slavery unless you were a prisoner. So if you look at statistics today, there's no plantations left. But when 7 out of 10 or 6 out of 10 of the people in prison are Black, you have recreated slavery. You're controlling aspects of people's lives. In the Midwest, places like Indiana, Kentucky, Tennessee, Missouri, people are still working on slave camps. So there still are slave camps today that exist. So we've swapped out the institution of slavery for the institution of prison. How many people have someone in their life that is incarcerated right now? I have like 3 friends who are in jail. Does anyone else have any family members who are incarcerated? I mean, you don't have to.
Yeah, I got brothers that's booked. They ain't come home.
Okay. So you have brothers that are in jail. And how old are your brothers?
They old enough. They all like close to 30.
Okay. So, and without prying too much, have they been in and out of jail most of their lives, or is this just something that just happened?
Two of them. Yeah, 2 of them. The last one, he just got booked by association.
Okay. So that's 3 that we can see even in the people in this classroom's lives that they're not being sent to plantations, they're being sent to prisons. It's a lot harder to have an open revolt in prison. But what happened was we switched out that institution of slavery for the institution of prison. I think it's like 1 out of 3 Black men in the United States will be in prison at some point in their life, which is kind of a shocking statistic. So let's talk about the aftermath. So after Nat Turner's insurrection, he was trying to get to a place called Jerusalem. And he was trying to get to the armory to build himself this small army of people. But instead, it actually increased the anti-Black slavery laws, and they came up with something called the Black Codes. I have the Black Codes pulled up, and I'm going to share with you what some of the Black Codes are. They're the same type of laws that, so these are the Black Codes, okay? They were restrictive laws designed to limit the freedom of African Americans and ensure their availability as cheap labor force after slavery was abolished during the Civil War. So even after the Civil War was fought, such resurrections as Nat, and it's not the only recorded slave insurrections. There were all types of different slave insurrections going on in the South. Nat Turner is remembered because it actually took the National Guard to come and subdue him. And it caused people to really feel uneasy about this idea of putting Blacks in these limitations. So let's see the passage of the Black Codes. Where's that at? So at the end of 1865, which is when the end of the Civil War, Mississippi and South Carolina, which are 2 of the culprits. South Carolina was the first state to secede from the Union. So you knew they would be the first to enact these type of Black Codes. So Mississippi's law required that Blacks have a written evidence of employment for the coming year each January. If they left before the end of the contract, they would be forced to forfeit early wages and were subject to arrest. In South Carolina, a law prohibited Blacks from holding any occupation other than farmer or servant unless they paid an annual tax of $10 to $100. So these codes limited, once again, occupation and education and social mobility. They could not have a job otherwise as a farmer or a servant. So being a servant and being a slave, they're really not that far off. Servants may have more abilities to do things, but in many ways, they were left to still subservient work. Um, and if anybody was free and black living in Charleston, they could, if they were, it's a vagrancy, which means if they came to a town and no one would hire them and they were free black men, they could say that they were being a vagrant. These were vagrancy laws. I think we talked about them before. And that person could be subjected to arrest and placed in back into a state of slavery. So a lot of these laws were just limits. If you read the third chapter here, it says, blacks who broke labor contracts were subject to arrest, beating, and forced labor. And apprenticeship laws forced many miners into unpaid labor for white planters. So in a lot of ways, these black codes kind of kept slavery fundamentally in condition. So in the North, they fought back, and this is where we get the 14th Amendment, which granted equal protection underneath the law. And then the 15th Amendment, which gave black men the right to vote. And as like I said earlier, so after the Civil War, 1865, 1870 is when we started to see these uprising in groups such as the Ku Klux Klan. And then the next two sections we're going to look at is we looked at Jim Crow laws, but we're going to talk about the civil rights movement in next class. So by 1877, when the last federal soldiers left the South and Reconstruction drew to a close, black people had seen little improvement in their economic and social status, and the vigorous effects of white supremacist forces throughout the region had done the political gains they had made. Discrimination would continue in America with the rise of Jim Crow laws, but would inspire a civil rights movement to come. So when you think about the timeline, the Jim Crow laws were after the Civil War and between the civil rights movement. Nat's rebellion was a few years before Jim Crow laws and the black codes. But his rebellion was kind of a way, it kind of drew national attention to the issue of slavery and the treatment of black Americans, period. Okay, I think that is just about done here. Okay, so review. Nat Turner was a slave who was educated. They called him the prophet. He decided to fight back against whites. And he didn't see it as a punishment for them. He saw it as a retribution from God himself for the ungodly acts of slavery, for the treatment, not just a week, not just a month, but 200 years of slavery and oppression is the reason that Nat Turner fought back. And I guess the same question that I posed to you in the beginning, now that you've seen about Nat Turner, I'm going to put the same exact poll up, and I want to see if anybody thinks anything different. So if you were enslaved like Nat Turner would, what measures would you take? Would you accept it? Would you run away? Would you fight? Or would you kill the master? I don't even think I can vote on this one. Was that you, Quay, who said fight already? It's the same poll. You're just asking different questions. I just want to see if your ideas have changed. Do we all go back to bed?
We gotta answer that question again. It just popped up on my screen.
Yeah, I'm just seeing if the results have changed any
Oh,
based off of what we saw today.
it disappeared. Say it again.
It should be up there. It says, if enslaved, what measures would you take? Would you accept it? Would you run away? Would you fight? Or would you kill the master?
Oh, there you go.
All right, thank you. I've only got 2 responses. Okay, so for those that did retake the poll, seems like there's a lot more fight this time around than, like somebody said that they would accept it. I think Miss Cat said it was dependent on how much control someone had over you. So a lot of these slaves were left with the choices of, there was people who committed suicide. There were people who just would run away every chance they get. And then there were people who embraced their, I don't want to say necessarily their destiny, but what they felt was their God-given reasoning for fighting back. And without people like Nat Turner, without people like John Brown, and there's a endless list of people who sacrifices their lives to make changes. One of the things that came out of this was the rules where there was no jury trials for Black people, which is a violation of the 7th Amendment or the 6th Amendment, the 6th and 7th Amendment, a fair and speedy trial and civil trial for matters under $20. So they were negating constitutional rights. But another one was, why do you think that after Nat's rebellion that state legislators made it illegal to teach Blacks to read? Why do you think that they would make legislators like that? Remember now, Nat was an intelligent person. He was educated. Why do you think they would make it illegal for Blacks to read? What do you think the reasoning was? I put it in the chat. What do you think the reasoning was that those state legislators would make it illegal for Black people to read? What do you think their fear was? We're running out of time. So the fear would be is that if you taught a Black man how to read and educate himself, Frederick Douglass said that knowledge makes a man unfit to be a slave. So having a thinker, having a leader, having a general, someone who could coordinate. If you had Blacks who could read and Blacks who were intelligent, they were usually the first ones that were killed. And that was in order to keep the others in line. So we have about 4 minutes left. So I want you to know that checkpoint 1 is up. You can begin work on that. I'd like to have it in by Friday. The information that you need is on Summit. There are 2 PowerPoints. There's 3 links for Jim Crow laws and their effects that you should be able to answer. And on Thursday, I would say it's Monday, so on Thursday, we'll be talking about John Brown. So is there any questions on what we discussed today? Any questions on Summit or Raji, I will work on getting a computer for you if you're still here. And Naima, I will have Dr. David reset your password for your Gmail. Okay, so do I have any more questions? Everybody knows that checkpoint 1 is due. Okay, it's been a nice quiet session this morning, but I thank you for sitting down and getting up and being at the computer. And thank you, Ms. Cat, for the morning meeting. Sorry about that connectivity issue. So I hope you guys have a good day, okay? Thank you, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Have a great day.